Aloha, and welcome to Risk and Reality, the podcast where cyber threats meet the real world. Things have changed. Cyber attacks are way up. The days of thinking, it won't happen to me, are over. One wrong click, one stolen password, one bad decision. Your business is one click away from disaster. Cybercrime isn't just an IT problem, it's a business problem. And if you think your company is too small to be attacked, think again. You're not too small to be a target, just too small to make the news. The real cost? Downtime, revenue loss, regulatory fines, lawsuits, reputational damage. The aftermath of a cyber attack can cripple your business before you even know what hit you. Hosted by Don Mangiarelli of Cybersecurity Hawaii, this show dives into the threats lurking in the digital shadows and what they really mean for your business and how you can fight back. Because in the world of cybercrime, the risk is real and so are the consequences. Welcome to Risk and Reality, brought to you by Cybersecurity Hawaii.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Risk and Reality. Today, we are talking with Chris Weiser, founder of Seven Figure MSP, and we'll be talking about the MSP space and how it has evolved since the early 2000s. Welcome aboard, Chris.
Early 2000s, I sound like an old ass now. I guess I'm getting a little old, so it is what it is. Good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Oh, you're not near. I got about 10 or 12 years on you, so I'm doing pretty good. I'm in Honolulu. It's another. We're having southerly Kona wind, so it's another foggy day. It looks like the volcano is going to erupt again today, so that'll be pretty cool. I'll be posting some pictures on Facebook of that.
Different world. I live in Austin, Texas, so it's just like okay, it's a little warm out, but that's about it. No volcanoes, no earthquakes.
No volcanoes. Yeah, but you have tornadoes and all that kind of stuff.
No, there's no tornadoes here. If it hurricanes, it just rains. Not much happens in Austin.
Not bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. All right. So, Chris started out in a small town in Wisconsin. He started an MSP. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings and kind of how you evolved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're spot on with that. I was from a small town in Wisconsin. I started a computer company first, actually. I was a retail computer store. And then I had some cell phone stores to try and drive traffic and all that kind of stuff. So I was very B2C earlier, business to consumer. And it just got kind of old, had some employee issues, had an embezzlement problem and a bunch of other things that kind of happened over time. And was kind of tired of trading hours for dollars. Like, didn't like that whole retail model. You got to go kill your dinner every day. So that kind of turned into me and I didn't go to college. So I was one of these guys that was a self-made, thousandaire at the point. And from my standpoint, it was like, how can I take the time? I only got so much time. I got a block of time in a day. And how can I make as much money as possible? Which that's now what I call scale and what most of us in entrepreneurial land call scale. So I started to pivot towards B2B. I could charge higher dollar amounts. And then this is back in like 2004. So it turned into figuring out how to do remote help desk, how to figure out to service clients remotely, because I could have a help desk and have guys, and then I could charge flat rate. And basically, I kind of grew up with what is now the MSP industry, that managed service provider space, charging a flat rate. And, I started in the good, better, best, kind of like a small, medium, large package. And you talked about a little bit earlier, we're doing some green room discussion about the race to the bottom, and we'll kind of come around on that. But the whole thing was, how do I scale as much as possible? How do I make as much money as possible? I think a big differentiator for me, and I think this is a really good point for anyone that's an entrepreneur out there, is I was not a control freak versus a lot of people that are technical. I'm across the hall from a dentist here. The owner is the dentist. He only wants to be the only dentist. Nobody's as good a dentist as him. I don't care what industry you're in. How big does that grow? That's it. That's literally it. You can't control that. You can't scale that. So for me, I wasn't a control freak, and I saw it as, here's an opportunity for me to expand scale, because I didn't go to, and I kind of looked at it as like, I didn't go to college. I'm not this hyper brilliant guy, but I can think smarter. I can think faster than them. So I'll do this and it'll make me more money. And that's really that's the same basic premise that I have today in business 25 years later, from when I started in 2000. Literally exactly, it's my 25th anniversary. I should make one of those stickers that says 25th anniversary. Yeah. It's the same basic premise of what I do now.
It's interesting you say about, you talk about execution a lot, and I follow Alex Hormozi. I know, he's got millions of followers, right? And he talks about how, the people with the best talent in the world have the same amount of hours every day as we do, but you can beat those people by, I'm in the same boat as you. I didn't go to college. I don't have all the knowledge that one would gain from going through business school. So I'm kind of making it up as I go along, but that if I work hard and I am consistent and I don't quit, that, eventually I'll find success. And that's really the path to success. Even for someone who's been through all the business training and so forth, they still have to consistently execute every single day. And if you're not doing that, if you get lazy, that kind of, that cuts your path. Really, it cuts you off at the knees. And so, when you decided, you started to grow your MSP, you were a one-man shop.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your first hire?
I came out of the box and I said, so actually what's interesting is I had some connections. I got a pretty decent contract starting out, but it was a lot of trading hours for dollars. I was an on-site tech for an orthopedic clinic, and I was doing, I believe 20 hours a week at that place. So I still had 20 hours to do stuff, but then how could I do help desk and how could I manage all this stuff? So my first hire became, did I want to have an engineer? Where could I make the most money? Make most money for me was I can be engineering in the field, but then I could hire a help desk guy to kind of manage all that. And even though I was on site at the client site, all the tickets were going to Eric. Eric was on my first team member. His name was Eric Wonder, actually. That's his real name. So Eric would get the very first ticket. Or the tickets, they would call into him. So they weren't calling me. So I was immediately right away, even in 2004, 2005, thinking scale, thinking those mindsets. So I hired that level, I guess a level one tech, and his job was to take all the tickets, take the calls, take the emails, make sure the tickets got created. He kind of had a little mini SOP that went along with it. Make sure the stuff got created. If he could manage it within 30 minutes, he would do it. If he couldn't, he would put it in a pile and Chris would get to it. That's where we started. And then I kind of grew. And what was interesting is he was able to solve about 95% of problems. And then what Chris did for the rest of the 20 hours a week, I went and sold. I networked, I marketed, and I sold stuff. And then all of a sudden we're like at 10K of MRR and 20K of MRR and 30K of MRR. And then I just kept selling and kept selling. And then as I grew, I had this whole blob of sales stuff. I had leads coming in. I had this whole blob of sales stuff that I could hand over to a sales guy. And that's really where I grew. And then I just became kind of the guy that said, go do this. I'll build a strategy. I'll do this. And I was out of the trenches completely, mostly because I wasn't a control freak, right? Whereas you think about some of the technical guys that we know, they do that just so they can go play in the toys. That's what they want to go play in. They want to go. I don't want to do this. I'll scale a help desk. But I want to scale the help desk, not so I can go sell, not so I can go lead gen, but I want to scale the help desk because I want to go back into play with servers, or I want to go with cloud, and the new one is I want to go build AI bots, AI agents. I want to go, and we see that. You and I are in the same groups now. We see that these guys find a reason not to market and sell.
And really, marketing and sales is what drives the growth of a company.
What industry you're in, period. It doesn't matter. Talk about the dentist across the street. If he's focused on dental, okay, great. But somebody's got to do that. Well,
right.
I don't care what it is.
And we've all only got the same amount of time every day, and we can all only do what we can do, right? And if we're in playing with the tools, then so would you say that's a whole mindset shift from being the tech to becoming the CEO?
Whatever your industry is in, you either have to be the CEO and the strategist, and just run the business, because your number one job as the CEO, yes, you're providing service, but that's not your number one job. That's probably I'd say it's almost tertiary, maybe even fourth or fifth down the line. Your number one job is to drive leads, provide cash flow, sales appointments, system management, and then probably service related stuff. That doesn't mean it's not important. It just means it's not number one. So
it's not the number one priority.
Yeah. So you have to make a decision mentally. Okay, I'm not going to be the tech, the dentist, the tech, whatever the role is. And if I'm going to choose to do that, then I got to hire somebody to do the other stuff, because that's more important. But most people don't. They're like, oh, I'm the owner, I can only do this. And then they focus on the wrong things.
Right. And if you're working in the business, it becomes unscalable at that point.
Yep, exactly. Nailed it.
So let's fast forward to 2015. You sold your business.
Mm-hmm.
What brought you to the point that you just decided you had enough and you wanted to sell?
It really wasn't that. It was more a matter of, like, I wasn't actively even looking to sell. I was in a place where I had been doing all the right things, which I realize now. Kind of didn't realize that at the time, but I had long-term contracts. I had a lot of recurring revenue. I had all the recurring revenue on auto pay. I also had Chris out of the trenches, and I was just kind of pointing and telling people what to do. Still managing, still doing a good job on it. We had consistent lead gen. We had consistent sales. I had a team where I was pretty much out of it, and I had somebody walk in the door. I think they actually sent a FedEx to me is what they ended up doing, but walk in the door saying, we're looking to acquire companies. You're on our list. We're from Chicago. We're looking to buy a company in Milwaukee to expand our footprint. Would you be open? I'm like, never going to say no to taking a meeting. Never going to say no. So we started having conversations, and we realized that there was a lot of congruency. We were a ConnectWise shop. They were a ConnectWise shop. We were a lab tech shop. They were a lab tech shop. We had better backup than them. We had better cloud than them. We had a lot of things that we did really, really well that they learned from and evolved. Most of my team that I hired 10 years ago is still there, actually. And they made me an offer. I was actually able to counter their offer with a bigger offer, because I said, no, I deserve more because I've done a really good job on all these things. Now, I had kind of been growing by accident, like learning all that stuff by accident, trial by fire, because all those things that gave me really good cash flow also gave me really good resale value and a good multiple. And I kind of at the point of it, pretty much had an offer that I couldn't say no to. Sat down, talked to my wife, and I was like, and she's like, I think we should sell it because you built one. How fast could you build another one? I'm like, much faster, especially with cash. I could build 10x faster.
Right.
So I kind of said, okay, I'm going to take a few months off. Sold it June of 2015. Took a few months off. We decided to move to Austin just to get out of winter more than, and you can relate to that being in Honolulu, right? We decided to get out of winter. And when I moved here to Austin, one of my MSP vendors saw that I moved to Austin. I had lunch with them and they offered me a role for a consulting gig to basically build their MSP channel. I'm like, okay, something different. It's good money. Never done that before. So instead of starting an MSP I'll try this. And it turned into that. I was there for a year, kind of decided. In fact, what's interesting, I don't think you know this, but I was in Vegas for a show a couple weeks ago for the Funnel Hacking Live for the ClickFunnels conference.
Yes, I saw that.
On the plane with me to Vegas from Austin was one of the guys that worked for me at that consulting gig. And he's like, hey man, what you doing? I haven't seen you in like 9 years, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know what's funny? Remember when I pitched that whole idea about educating MSPs and teaching them how to sell? I said, remember when the CEO, when I pitched that to the CEO and he made fun of me, he's like, yeah, he kind of like pointed you out in front of the whole company. It's like, I built that. It's an 8-figure company now. And we were on Inc. 5. He's like, whoa, that's so cool. So that's kind of how the whole thing started, was at that contractor job that I took on. I saw an opportunity in the MSP industry, and that was sales management and sales. There was a giant hole. And I said, I'm going to fill that hole. And that's how 7-figure MSP was broken.
What year did you come up with 7-figure MSP?
Well, it was Chris Weiser's Inner Circle initially, and that was November of 2016. I kind of went dark for like 6 months. So I left the contracting gig and pretty much went dark. I had some cash, so I could, I was never going to take a gap year or something. You hear people talk about gap year, but I went dark. And you see this now on people's X/Twitter content and TikTok and all these things. If you go lock yourself in a room and work on XYZ for the next 6 months and you'll come out of it. Well, I did that. I went dark, taught myself all kinds of things, taught myself Facebook ads, taught myself all this other stuff to do. And I came out of that with, I'm going to build a coaching program that's going to change. And I basically built my curriculum that you are a part of today, which is very much the similar core. Now it's evolved and grown and changed a little bit, but for the most part, the core is still the same. And I'm going to teach MSPs how to double their MRR because this industry has never charged properly and it needs to. And I was case in point that it could be done because I was in the Milwaukee market and I averaged $182 a seat when I sold in 2015, which most MSPs still come into our program interview room. The average is $68 a seat now in 2025. So that's
when you say their MSPs are not charging properly. What do you mean by that?
Well, so you think about any professional services industry, who dictates the price? If it's a properly built, you think about legal, think about bookkeeping, you think about accounting, you think about your higher level professional services industry. Does the client dictate the price or does the professional, the expert, dictate the price?
The expert.
The expert does. In the MSP industry, in the computer guy, the IT guy industry, whatever you want to call it. I apologize for the ladies out there because you're all lumped into that. For the most part, because the MSP industry never had like a real smoking gun, like just think about what was the reason to put in managed services for a long time? We'll make your people more efficient. You need somebody to manage your network, so we'll do it. But there's no like business reason to do it unless you got to 300, 400, 500 people. And then at that point, they're just going to hire internally. So there's never like a real reason to do it. So in order for MSPs to be somewhat viable, what they did was they'd go out and they'd work with a client and they'd change their lowest common denominator to try and match the client needs. The lowest common denominator in that situation is usually price.
Right.
Or it was like, we're the fastest support guy. Well, nobody really cares about fast support. Yes, they want it consistent, but that's not really what's going to move the needle. And it's surely not going to move the needle to 2, 3, 4, 5x pricing. So kind of a race to the bottom is really what it was. And, if you're competing against Joe MSP guy across the hall, the stack is the stack. And what are they going to choose? They're going to choose the price.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened. Well, we came in with a different mindset, which is if you deliver an all-inclusive suite, and what's really happened in the last 5 to 8 years here. So you got a combination of the all-inclusive solution, which is the best, which is what the client should have. It's also going to manage your cybersecurity now, which is a big factor. It's also going to manage your AI, all these other things. Also going to make sure you have cybersecurity insurance and takes care of all the things you should be doing. We're moving the discussion from we're the cheapest guy on the block to here's why you should have us, because you're going to need to recover when you get hacked, not if. Everyone's getting hacked, so you're going to need to recover when that happens. You're also going to need to be in a place where not only can you recover, but somebody else, insurance, actually pays the bill. And if you don't do it the right way, your claim's not going to get paid. So now we finally kind of have this smoking gun. So when you have the smoking gun, your price point can be dictated more by the expert versus that client side. So we're moving into some higher end discussion. That's what our whole thing is about now. So it's teaching MSPs they're still the techs, so they still think that old way. So our goal is to change their mindset.
It's more about an all-in service price now versus a tiered set of pricing where, because if you think about it, if you give customers tiered pricing, they're always going to choose the cheapest one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Every time. And there's very few that are going to go, hey, give me the Cadillac.
And so much of this now is I'm going to show you what you should have. And if you choose to have the cheapest crap, that's fine. But you know what? I'm not going to be left holding the bag.
Right.
When you do get breached, hacked, money stolen, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to fall on you, and then we'll deal with picking up the pieces. And you're still going to have people that never spend $1 on IT and are never going to spend $1 on IT, but it gives you as an IT provider, as a managed service provider, as a cybersecurity expert, as an AI expert, gives you a place to go.
Right. Okay. It leads in that explanation kind of leads into my next question is, you've made several prognostications, that have come true, one of which was around cyber insurance. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see now that cyber insurance companies are creating their own more security companies and offering that to their clients, saying, hey, well, if you want our policy, you can implement this cyber security stack and you'll be covered. What it lacks is the IT side of things. It only covers the cybersecurity side. What does the MSP space look like in your mind, maybe in the next 5 years?
Well, I think it's going to be. I think it's still going to be here. That's one thing that I'll say. But we're also going to see the insurance companies are really trying. They're definitely, and I've been saying this also, they are in Washington lobbying to try and get IT and MSP and everybody downstream that does cybersecurity now. They're trying to get them regulated because they want to actually control who is managing the cybersecurity on it. And I think you're going to see as time goes on here, I think the insurance companies are going to kind of screw themselves because there's definitely a conflict of interest there, right? We know that, right? So I think that's going to eventually happen, but there's going to be regulation that's going to come down. And I hate to see it come from the government, but I don't know who else is going to take control. So I think you're going to see a combination of things. I think the insurance companies are going to try and do that. They're going to drive the market pricing way up, which is good. It's really good. They're going to drive the market pricing way up, but then they're going to attempt to deregulate MSPs. And I think that's going to to backfire on them. And left standing are going to be the MSPs that truly deliver a proper stack, because during that entire process, your little race to the bottom guys are going to be gone. They're going to die because now, is there always going to be some dude, pulling teeth in the back of a car? Okay, yeah, maybe, but it's real painful and it's not real fun for anybody involved, right? So I think you're going to watch all of that happen. Now it's going to take anywhere from, I'd say, 3 to 5 years for all that to come out. I think the market pricing is going to go up. And I think the strong, properly run MSPs are going to survive, and I think they'll be okay. I think there is going to be some regulation around it and some legislation around it. But if you're doing the right things now, so then the question for anybody watching, which is, okay, what's the right things? What should the client have? Best in class? Going to pass muster on any type of a compliance scenario? I think there is going to be compliance in place, probably CIS 8 or around those lines. And then it's going to be something that would qualify past what would be considered malpractice in medical. Like we kind of have a standard in medical, kind of a
right.
There's going to be a standard that you follow. If you follow that stuff, you're probably going to be fine. And if you do marketing, if you do sales, you're going to be okay. That's the way I look at it. And I think the insurance companies are going to deregulate themselves right out of the mix, and there's going to be a conflict of interest.
I mean, really, we're starting to see that regulation in Australia, Canada, UK, right? EU is implementing baseline cybersecurity for businesses, and if you don't have it, they fine you. If you get attacked, on top of having to pay for the attack and probably getting your claim denied, the government's going to fine you.
Yeah, and I think what's also going to happen. I mean, so a lot of people a lot of the IT companies in the States and a lot of the medical professionals in the States are like, well, they tried to do this with HIPAA and patient privacy and all that. Here's the challenge. There was really not a whole lot of, not only a lot of police, but there wasn't a lot of penalty, even if they got their stuff hacked. It wasn't that big of a deal. If their patient records got lost, it wasn't that big of a deal. Well, now with hacking, the big factor, the industry is almost going to regulate itself, because when people get hacked, they lose massive dollars. That's going to regulate, right? So you think about that. So it's going to, I think a lot of it is going to self-regulate around those things.
Sounds good. All right. And I put up your website here on the screen. I want to send it out to any MSPs that are interested, sevenfiguremsp.com. And you can check out Chris's program and see what is happening there. Chris, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on. I know you're busy, and I just really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about some of the things that are important in this industry.
I appreciate you so much. You've been a great friend and a great client last few years here, so I can't wait for the future.
All right, man. I'll see you around.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye now.